Thank you, Mr. President. I rise on behalf of the Legislative Women's Caucus in support of SCR 12 and in honor of the late Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. I want to say that today's my birthday, and I want to say the universe is working to my good to be able to celebrate Dr. King on behalf of the Women's Caucus today. I also want to share that in my district, I had the honor of knowing fighters and co-architects of the civil rights movement in my district, Reverend James Lawson being one of them, and Miss Gwen Green. Miss Gwen Green, who is a founder of SCLC LA, and was the fundraiser here in Los Angeles for the movement. And she would, over a strong martini, tell me stories about how she would pick up Dr. King at the airport and take him around to the local churches in my district in South Central Los Angeles, and to many of your districts and to your constituents who would have home fundraisers to support bail and feeding the movement. So I'm very honored to be here and sharing that story and this message today. Through the revolutionary civil rights movement, Dr. King fought for equality, our humanity, so that Black people in this country could live with the same freedoms as all Americans and to make real the promises of democracy. Dr. King and the Black Freedom Movement also opened the doors for other marginalized groups to walk through, including the women's equal rights movement that led to transformative change in California and across the country. He utilized a multi-phase strategy that transitioned the movement for not only fighting for social accommodation and desegregation for Black people, but to the poor people's fight for economic justice and workers' rights. He understood that real jobs and real protections and real skills meant real opportunities and were essential to attaining the true liberation of our community in this country. In his speech at the AFL-CIO convention in 1961, Dr. King said the labor movement was the principal force that transformed misery and despair into hope and progress. It not only sought for equality for Black people, but it sought to unite a divided nation. In his memoir, Why We Can't Wait, Dr. King explained that he led a nonviolent movement because it would enable our nation to heal after the movement was won, creating a beloved community for all of us to live. That beloved community continues to be our aspiration, with equitable access to quality employment, education, housing, and health care, and a place where all Americans can live free from discrimination and safe from racial terror and hate. Because of failed public policy, systemic racism, and economic violence that is carried forth into the 21st century, Dr. King's dream is out of reach for far too many Black, working class, immigrant, and other communities of color. For example, while Black people are only 6% of California's population, we disproportionately comprise nearly 40% of the state's homeless and 30% of those incarcerated in prisons inside the industrial complex. More than a quarter of our state's residents are living near or in poverty, and we only need to look at the children of my district, where in LAUSD, 80% of our students live in families that are at or below the poverty line, while millions of Californians are still going without health care, a basic human right. I say that all to say that we know that Dr. King's fight for equity is not yet over, yet we in this room, and this is a message that Reverend Lawson asked me to share with you all, that we in this room have the power to ensure that equity is realized in the lives of all Californians. Yesterday, the Legislative Black Caucus had a powerful event, and the legendary speaker, Willie Brown, was there, and he reminded all of us that we are descendants of Dr. King. And as the only Black woman in the California State Senate, I'm so proud to stand on the shoulders of women like Ms. Green, women like Ella Baker and Rosa Parks. And therefore, I ask you all to reflect on this resolution today and Dr. King's legacy by ensuring that California continues to fight for economic and racial equity in this country. And I respectfully ask for your aye vote.